What's up guys, there's Cousin here. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about Expo Router in React Native. Let's get into it. Alright, cool. So, Expo Router. Expo Router is essentially a navigation library that's built specifically for React Native applications that are built with Expo. It's also a file-based router, which is very similar to how Next.js is doing things with the new app directory, which basically means that you set up a folder, usually called app. It's also called app in Expo Router, and then based off of how you define your folder structure and the files within that folder, that is how your navigation is going to look within your React Native application. This one is also built on top of React Navigation, which is also another popular navigation library, so you're going to see a lot of similarities between the two. To get started with Expo Router, you want to go to docs.expo.dev, and then here on the left, you want to find the routing section, and then you want to go to installation. Now, right off the bat, you're going to notice that there's two ways that you can approach installing Expo Router. The first one is using this quick start, which is actually the recommended way from Expo, and the second one is the manual installation. Now, I would personally only recommend that you do the quick start if you already know about Expo Router and how it works, because what this is going to do, you're going to run this command and it's going to create for you an application with Expo Router already installed and a lot of the boilerplate code already set up, which is great if you just want to start and get right away to building an application. But if you want to learn, like in our purposes for this video, I would recommend you start first with the manual installation, you understand Expo Router, and then you can do the quick start. So that's exactly what we're going to do, but honestly, don't even worry about it. It's like just 4 steps. They're really super simple. And the first step is literally to just create an Expo project. So I'm going to come here, copy this command, go here to my terminal, and then I'm going to paste this command, but I'm also going to add -t because this is going to allow us to select a template for our application. So this is going to give us a few options here. Just give it a moment. And here we can select blank with TypeScript, navigation with TypeScript, which is actually the one that you would get if you were to run this command directly. And for our purposes, we're just going to do blank with TypeScript because we want to have TypeScript and we want to set up our own navigation ourselves. So I'm going to let this run. I'm going to give this a name, Expo Router tutorial, and then we're going to let this run for just a moment. Great, so now that's finished, we can copy this command here, cd expo router tutorial, paste it, go inside of the folder, and then I'm just going to do code dot to open VSCode directly in this folder. I'm going to make my VSCode a little bit bigger so that you guys can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's the magic number. And then here we have our Expo application already set up. Now what we can do is we can go back to the website and we can proceed with step number 2, which is to install the dependencies. I'm just going to copy this command, come back here to my terminal, paste this command. And while that is running, I'm just going to proceed to the next step because we can do this right away. The next step is to set up the entry point to our Expo Router navigation through the package.json file. So literally just copy this line right here, go back to VS Code, open up the package.json. On line 4 here, you have your main. You just need to replace this with the thing that you copied from Expo Router. This is going to make the entry point of our application to go directly into Expo Router. This is required. Then you want to go back to Chrome, and then you want to modify the project configuration. So just copy this as well, come back here, and then this was in app.json, which is right here. And then we can put this, I guess, right below the slug. We just put this here, make a comma, and we're going to rename this to Expo Router tutorial. And that's it. And now I believe there's one more step. This we're not going to do because we're not interested in the web version, but we need to add the plugin to our Babel config. So again, just copy this line right here, go back to VS Code, and then babel.config.js. You literally just have to paste this and you are done. You've successfully set up Expo Router in your React Native application with Expo. Let's check now on our dependencies, and they are installed. Great, which means that we can probably do npm run iOS and see what happens. So there you go, it's running the application now. Let's see if it works successfully. There's always a chance that this is not going to work, so we're going to see. And it does. Welcome to Expo. Start by creating a file in the app directory. So there you go. We have Expo, we have Expo Router, and everything is working as we expect. So now what we can do, we can go back here to VS Code, we can close all of these files, and we can actually start building the structure of our navigation. So as I've said, everything is dependent on file-based routing, which means that we need a folder. And as you can see here, it's telling us that we need to create a file in the app directory. Well, currently we don't have an app directory, so let's make it. We'll do here app, And then inside of here, I'm just going to do index.tsx, press enter, and then I'm just going to create a basic component. So I'm going to do rjsfc home page. By the way, if you're wondering where that snippet comes from, I have a whole video on that. Make sure to check it out. And then I'm just going to return view from React Native, and then text also from React Native, and I'm going to say home page. If I save this and I open up the simulator, we have our home page right here. So we've confirmed that Expo Router is working through this app directory and is correctly getting this index.tsx file. That's great. Now what we can do is we can start creating other routes. So here I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call this users. Now just by doing this, I've already enabled the /users URL endpoint that we can navigate into. Obviously, this is now not going to work because we need a file inside of it. So let's create one. I'm going to create a file, and this time I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to make here a dynamic route with a URL parameter. So I'll put square brackets and then ID, close the square brackets, and then .tsx. What this is going to do is whatever we pass to /users/ID, and ID can be a number, string, whatever, it can be 1, 2, 3, ABC, it's going to render this component right here. That is how file-based routing works. And again, it's very similar to how you do things in Next.js. So here, I'm also going to create a new component, rjsfc. That's going to be user page. And then again, I'm just going to render a view from React Native and then text also from React Native, and we're going to do user page. And there we go, we have our user page. Now the problem is that if I go back to our simulator, we have no way to get to this user page, right? So we have to actually implement a way for our users to navigate within our app. Now, the way that you do that in Expo Router is you have two different ways. The first way is you use the native link component from Expo Router to just create a link in your page and then navigate through that. Or you can do it programmatically by importing the router object from Expo Router and then calling the .push or .navigate method on it. I'm going to show you both ways because both ways are really useful in different circumstances. So first, let's do the link. So I'm going to come here and then do link. Import this directly from Expo Router, and then I'm going to give it some text, go to user 1, and then here you can pass it an href tag, just like you would do in a normal HTML A tag, and then you can give it whatever URL you want. So I'm going to do it /users, again, for this folder right here, and then /1, right? Because this is going to be the ID that we get here. Now, if I open up the simulator, I have a button here that I can press, and it brings me to our user page. So there we go. We've successfully navigated using this link component. Now, the next way, as I said, is using the router directly from Expo Router. So what we can do is we can come here and then we'll use a pressable from React Native. So a pressable from React Native, and then I'm going to go here, go to user 2, save this, and then here on press, we're going to give it a function. And that function is going to do router from Expo Router. So import that .push. And then again, we're going to give it here a URL /users/2. Save this, go back to our application. Now we need to refresh. And then we have, oh, right, I forgot. Whenever you're putting text in React Native, you always have to put it within a text tag. This is something that you're soon going to learn as you work with React Native. Let's try this again. There we go. We have go to user 1 and go to user 2. If I press go to user 2, it works exactly in the same way. We are also sent to the user page. Now, a question you might have is when should you use link and when should you use directly the router.push method? Well, honestly, it depends. If you just want to have a simple link in your UI, in your component to navigate somewhere else, and also if you need specifically some of the functionalities of link, for example, here, if I press and hold, you see that this is highlighted, right? This is not the case if I press and hold or pressable here. So if you need all of that, I would recommend link. But sometimes you need to navigate the user programmatically, not necessarily through a link. Maybe you have a form that on submit, you want to redirect the user to another page. That would be a great use case for using this method. Both methods are valid, both methods are great, and there's really not one that's better than the other. It really ultimately depends as to what you want to do specifically when you want to navigate the user. Also, something that's very important to know is that you don't have to necessarily pass the parameters here in the URL directly like we did here. Let's say, for example, that this was like this. We had user ID. You don't have to do it this way. You don't have to do everything in one string with string interpolation. What you can do instead, as an option, is you can come here and you can pass an object instead. And here you can do path name. And this one is going to be /users/ ID, right? Slash ID. And then here you can do params and then ID is equal to 2, right? This is functionally equivalent, and this gives you a little bit more flexibility if you need to do it this way, if you prefer this API over giving everything directly inline. And this will also work in this href right here. And as you can see, I can press go to user 2 and it works exactly the way that we had it before. Now, this is great. We've successfully implemented navigation between pages, but our user page here currently is not aware, or at least is not making use of this ID parameter that is getting passed to. And the way that we can change that is we can use a new hook from Expo Router called use local search params. So what I can do is I can do const ID equals use local search params, import this from Expo Router, and then we get automatically access to the ID, and then I can plug this into our component. I can do ID, do it like so, and now if I go back to our simulator, we have this ID right here. If I refresh and then I go to user 1, we have user 1, user ID 1, refresh, user 2, we have user ID 2. So this is the way that you would get this. Any parameters that you pass, you would use local search params. If you need to type this, you can just do this. Again, new keyboard, apologies. ID, actually this has to be an object, so we'll do ID, and then that would be a string, and then we're going to close this object, close this, and then you can type this as well. And now our ID here is correctly typed as a string, right? So you can type this in any ways that you want. You can export your types and structure them however you want. And this is how you get access to the parameters in any given route. All right, cool. So now this is great, but if you go back to our application, I hope that you notice that we have some missing functionality. For one, we have no way to actually go back to the previous page that we were on. The only way that we can go back is if I refresh the entire application from the Expo developer menu. I refresh this, it's going to put me back to the home page, and then I can navigate again, but I can never go back. And also, we have no animations when we navigate. I click this and it's instantly bringing me to the user page. So let's change that. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to make use of stacks from Expo Router, which directly wraps the stacks that you have in React Navigation, the popular navigation library that Expo Router is based on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new file inside of app, and I'm going to call this layout.tsx. Inside of here, I'm going to do rjsfc, and I'm going to call this root layout. And then here, instead of giving any actual React Native elements, I'm going to import stack from Expo Router, and inside of it, we get to define the screens that are available within our stack. So what I can do is I can do stack.screen, and we can do name is equal to home. And actually, no, name is going to be equal to index because this is the file name here. So remember, your names here always have to match the file names because everything is based off this file structure. And then we can just close this right here and save. And then we want to do the same thing for our users. We can do users slash and then square brackets ID square brackets. Again, it has to directly match the folder structure even when you're using dynamic parameters. And now with this, if I go back to our application, we have new things here. Let me just refresh so we get a clean slate. We now have a header here, which is really cool. We did not have this before. And now if I go to user 1, we have an animation and we have a back button. This is beautiful, right? We can press this, we can go back, we can go to user 2, and we can fully navigate within our application. Also, what we can do on iOS is we can just slide here from the left and we can control this back navigation, right? We can stop it, we can interrupt it, or we can fully navigate, right? This is what you get by using the stacks here from Expo Router, which directly map through React Navigation to the native stacks, the navigation stacks on iOS and Android separately. And the cool thing about this is that if you notice here at the top, we have index, that is directly the name that we provided here. And then if you go to user, we have /user/ID, right? That's not pretty, but the cool thing about this is that you can completely customize. So we can come here and we can do options. We can give this an object and we can do header, title, and we can do here home, or actually homepage, why not? And then we can do the same thing here for our user/ID page, options, give it an object and do header, title, and then we can do user page. If we save this, we go back to our application. Now we have user page here at the top. We can go back and now we have home page. And if I navigate again to any user, now this back button is telling us home page. This is where it's going to redirect us to, right? So this is really, really easy to customize. You can also do things like header style, and then you can give it here, for example, background color, and we can do red. And now if I go back here, our header is now red, which means that if I go to user 1, it automatically transitions from red to white. And also what's really cool is if you slide over from the left, you can see how this transition is happening, right? And you can completely control it. We have the transition here with the color, but also with the back button. You see how like homepage is like moving from right to left? That's really cool. You get all of these benefits because we are using stacks, which again maps to directly the navigation stacks on iOS and Android respectively. And now the last thing that we want to do is we actually want to create here some bottom tabs, because that is a functionality that is really useful and common in almost any sort of application that you would have on a mobile phone. So what I can do is I can come here and I can create here a new folder. We're going to call this tabs. And I'm using here, as you can notice, I'm using here parentheses. Essentially, this works exactly in the same way that it does with Next.js. This is what you call grouping. Whatever you put inside of the parentheses here is not going to show up in the URL. So it's not going to be a part of the URL, but it's very useful if you want to organize related pieces of code, related routes or screens in the same folders. You would use this notation here without affecting the URL. So this is really useful. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move our index file inside of tabs. So I'm going to move it here. And then I'm also going to move these users here inside of tabs as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file inside of tabs, call it layout as well. So again, these layout files are essentially how you define the layout for this group, for this related folders here and everything within it. And these layouts are overridable. So we have our root layout here, which is in the root of app. This one is going to get overridden by the layout of this tabs here for all of the files and roots that are within this tabs. And you can go as deep as you want. Now in here, I'm going to do another component, rjs_sfc, and I'm going to call this tabs layout. And then here, instead of doing a stack like we did previously in this layout here, I'm going to make use of the tabs from Expo Router. And then just like we did it, we're going to do the same thing, tabs.screen, and actually let Copilot do the work for us. And then tabs.screen name. Let's see if Copilot does it. It does it. I love Copilot. It is really great. So we have this here. That's done. We have our tabs layout. And then what we need to do is we need to go back to our root layout. And instead of having this here, this is no longer applicable. We can get rid of all of this. We will now have just one single screen, and it's going to be stack.screen name. And then can you guess what the name is going to be? I'll give you just a couple of seconds. 1, 2, 3. It's going to be tabs with the parenthesis here, and then we're going to close this. Again, this has to always match exactly the folder names here with all of the square brackets, all of the parentheses. And essentially what we've done here is we created a stack as we had before, and we just gave it one screen, and we told it that this screen is going to be the tabs here. And then what Expo Router is going to do, it's going to go here to tabs, it's going to try to find a layout, which it does, we have it here, and then it's going to render all of this as the screen here, which means that you can compose and you can nest your navigators. We could have also done a stack here instead of tabs, and we could have done it the same way. You can nest your navigators, you can nest your stacks, and you can have any sort of deep structure that you want to have, right? So the fact that we did it this way, we just did name here tabs, and this is now going to render here our tabs with our screens. So let's save this and let's see what happens in our app. If I refresh, do we have it? We don't have it. We have some errors here. Again, this was really weird. I always got this and I'm not really sure why, some errors. Let me try if I can fix them. And actually, oh, again, layout children, too many screens defined. Root ID users is extraneous. Is it really? Let me try to. Sometimes you literally just have to stop this whole thing completely and then restart it. This is going to restart your iOS device. And then it's not even picking up that it should reload itself. So I have to manually close the app and then open Expo Go again, and then wait for it to load and then come here to Expo Router. And hopefully this works. And there you go. We have our tabs, we have here index user ID, it works, but I'm not sure and I wasn't able to figure out why it didn't work in the first place. That's the nature of like React Native and Expo. Sometimes it can be buggy and sometimes you need to just reset things to get it to work as you expect. So great, I mean, right, this is great. We have here our tabs here, but at least there's something strange going on here, but we have our bottom tabs here at the bottom and we can navigate to user/ID and index and everything seems to work. Now the first thing that I want to fix is, it looks like we have two headers here. We have one header that's called tabs and then one header that's called index. If I go back to our code, the header that's called tabs is coming from here directly, right? This is the header of this stack. The header that's called index is the header of this tabs stack, which again is coming from this screen right here. So essentially, we don't want this. We just want to have one header, and we only want this inner header, right? So what we can do, we can come back here to our root layout, and we can pass in some options here, and we can say header shown, and then we're going to do false. If I save this, go back to our app, now we only have the header of the inner stack. And this you have to do because if you're nesting stack navigators together, you don't want the header of one stack to override the header of the other stack. So you have to be careful with this, and you have to make sure that you provide this so that only one header is shown. And then I also want to get rid again of this index because I don't really like it. So I'm going to come here and then do home. And then instead of users, actually, no, that's not right. We want to do options and then header title home, and then do the same thing here again, options, header title, that's not home, that's user, and we're gonna do page. And now, also what I wanna do, if we now go back here, we have home as we had it before, go to user one, we have the user page here. And as you can see, when we navigate it, if I can just, well, now we lost our back button because now it's part of this bottom tabs. But if I go back here to home, I can press go to user two here, and it brings me to the user page, but it also automatically updates the bottom tabs. That's what you get when you're using the native tools from Expo Router, right? But now I want to change also the titles of this here. I don't like index, I don't like users. We change them here in the header, but we also should change them in the bottom tabs here. So you can also do that with a simple option. You can come here, you can do title, and then we can do home, and then title, user, and I'm going to put user here just because we have limited space. And again, these titles are specifically for these bottom tabs here, so they probably won't be available for the other stacks. You would have to use header title for those. And now if I go here, we have home and we have user, and navigating between them works as we expect. Now there's a bunch more options that you can play around with this, so I would highly encourage you to do that. And also you have to keep in mind in the documentation of Expo Router, it is mentioned that tabs and the stack here may at some point be extracted in their own custom library. So if that happens, you would just have to install the library and import them from there instead of Expo Router. But again, that's a minor detail. So with that, we have a fully working application. We have navigation already set up. We can navigate again using the link component directly from Expo Router, and we can also navigate from programmatically from our pressable from router.push to our pages, and they're automatically working within our bottom tabs here, and everything works as we expect. Obviously, this is a very simple example, but actually going back to what I talked about initially in the first video, this is pretty much what you get from this quick start. It does all of this for you and a little bit more, just a little bit. So now I would actually recommend, if you watch this tutorial and if you feel comfortable with Expo Router, I would recommend that from now on, you just do the quick start and you get all of this set up, because it's really redundant to have to do this every single time you create a new Expo application. So there you go, guys. That was a tutorial on Expo Router. I hope that this was valuable to you. I hope that you now understand Expo Router. And if you did, I would really appreciate if you click subscribe. It would really, really help me out a lot. And also, if you want, you can watch another video of mine, which I'm sure that is super, super awesome, because that's what YouTube is recommended to you. And with that being said, my name has been Darius Kozin. This is Kozin Solutions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Ciao, ciao.